Thank you, Karen, and thank you, Nadine. I'm actually going to follow a similar structure as you did. So I'll begin by introducing myself and our firm, and then I'll talk about some reflections on thinking about career, particularly when we're when we as consultants, when we're interacting with people for the first time, what's really helpful for us to hear, and it requires some work on your part. Um, then some tips on working with a search firm, and then finally a thought about peace. I think meaning inner peace. I think Michael is going to talk about peace and meaning. I'm not going to go that far, but at least a couple of thoughts about that. So first, um, so I'm the founder and managing partner of the 360 Group. We're based in San Francisco and Washington, D.C. So search firms work for the client. We're hired by the client. But our job is to match candidates with the client's needs, broadly speaking. In our case, our clients are all social sector organizations, social impact organizations. I think what makes us different, what distinguishes us, and it has from the start, 21 years now, is that our role, our impulse, our sort of mission and imposed, like self-imposed goal is to identify people of great talent who may have been traditionally overlooked. That's all kinds of people. Um, that is, I think we all know that we're all intersectional in some way. That's one of the dirty words these days. Not as dirty as some others, but it's true. And so this is not about any particular, our work is not about anything in particular, any group in particular. It's more what we call underrepresented majorities. How we think, if you count the numbers, people who are different um, from the kind of the classic mainstream um, have lots of talent and have been overlooked. So that's our particular view of the world, and that's how we work with our clients and run our practice. So, in advice in terms of career um, and thinking about maybe you've been dislocated, which is terrible, and particularly how it's been imposed. I mean, it's terrible generally. This one's particularly odious, I think, for a number of reasons. That's not what we're here to talk about, and you all have your opinions about that too. Um, but when people come to us, there are a couple things that we need people to really think through. The first is think about what you want to do and why. And it may be, as Nadine was saying, it may be a pivot, or it may not be. But some things that come to mind to frame that thinking is it could be a passion you have. It could be specific competencies that you have. It could be a challenge you're seeking. It could be lifestyle or life balance or something like that. But like kind of take a look in the mirror and like why, because I mean, I don't want to put lipstick on a pig, in terms of, oh, I lost my job and my health insurance, or it's about to end, and so now what? But taking the opportunity to just think about and talk to your friends and your networks and people who've known you who can sometimes see passions that you can't, or sometimes see competencies that you can't, and so on. I have actually found that to be over the course of my own career and running the 360 group, I haven't really ever stopped doing that. I mean, you can kind of get on autopilot, and then something happens, and you need to that's the time to do it, is when you have sort of break in the rhythm that you had. The other thing to think about is environments in which you thrive and environments in which you don't. So these are things like mission, team culture, management culture, uh, level of inclusiveness, compensation, big picture on compensation. So I don't just mean salary, but how you're compensated, what it does for your life. So money is, of course, I can't overlook it. None of us can. particularly in the US. But what you can, but I see people not taking into effect or taking into account flexibility, how, how many days in the office. This is even before the pandemic. How many days in the office do I have to be there? Is there flex time? How do we work together? Whatever your preferences are. So I'm not imposing my preferences on you all. I'm just saying take all those things into account. Because one day I was talking with one of my colleagues and I was like, what's really great is because I had a job. I went down, before I started the firm downtown San Francisco, and I realized that my dry cleaning bill was much lower than it had been. Um, that's compensation. And of course, then the pandemic came along, so then it was basically pajamas most of the time. But you take my point. So think about those, think about where you thrive and where you don't. For example, when I finished business school, I went to a big Wall Street investment bank, and it was super interesting to me. Um, I also very quickly realized it was not my place for two reasons. One, I'm not on this earth to help rich people be richer. Like, I mean, I'm not saying that's not a role, but it's not the role I have. So that's slightly philosophical, slightly existential. It was an ethnographic experience. I was really interested in how these people thought about things, but I realized it wasn't for me. And the other thing I realized is that for me, big corporate just didn't work. I just didn't I just didn't feel right there. And at the time, so this would have been at the turn of the century, uh, the firm was really trying to, in small ways, not capital, DEI kind of ways, but really trying to become more welcoming. And they were doing an okay job. And I didn't feel unwelcome there in any way, and I thought our entering associate class was actually quite diverse, and there was some mentorship from partners and so forth, which I appreciated. So I think they were doing a good job, but I had worked in much more diverse environments before and I was just more advanced in that way, in terms of my sensibilities, not in terms of my smarts, but just in terms of what resonated more with me. So all that to say, I encourage you to think about these things and like Nadine was saying, reflect on your accomplishments and reflect on your experiences. Like, who did you like working with? Where did you like working? Where did you hate working? We all have the stories. So, and if you kind of plumb into that, and also, once again, your loved ones know where you hated working and where you loved working, even if you don't know. So definitely ask for help. Um, in terms of working with a search firm, this leads me to the point of, and this is where things can get, where people can not be clear or don't know what to do. Um, I think it's really important, especially given our bent on things. It's really important that we know as best we can, and this of course happens over time, that we know who a person is. So, do customize your written materials for a given role if you choose to apply for something. And I agree with Nadine, don't apply sort of willy-nilly, but don't be afraid to apply for something that you think is really interesting either. That gives us a good opportunity to talk with you. So yes, customize your written materials for that. But don't, when you get into conversation or even your written materials, don't say what you think the other party wants to hear. Um, because then we don't get to know you. We're getting to know a tape of you. And no matter what, one of the things that I've learned over these years is you can you can pretend to be somebody that you're not until you can't pretend anymore. So we want to make sure that the person who is hired into an organization is the actual person that is, because that person will show up eventually, even if they've tried to be something else. So you really want to just be yourself. And again, if you've gone through a reflection kind of process as I just described, that shouldn't be difficult for you to do. Um, I do want to emphasize what Nadine said about language and transition from different fields. One of the things that I've been seeing of late, of course, is people from the federal government. It was initially a big onslaught from USAID. Now it's from throughout. Um, and I have to say that I'm reading these, and I have great regard for these organizations and these people and what they, not only what they've been doing, but the competencies with which they've been doing them. I mean, these people are really impressive. Language skills all over the place and travel the world, and it's so impressive. And then I get to their jobs, and I'm like, I don't really know what this job is. I just don't know. It's hard for me to make sense of it. So that's where you might want to connect with someone who can translate that work for you, like a professional, like a resume writer or advisor. Because by the time you get to me, I don't know unless we happen to. We have in our team, we have people with experience in, before they joined the 360 group or started doing search, had different experiences. So we might know, but don't assume that somebody does, that they know the specifics of what you're doing. So use language that is neither too specialized or technical, but that is accessible, what the Catholics might call lay language. That's really important because that helps you get in the door. It helps to open the conversation again into the real person that you are. I want to close by talking about at least commenting on peace, inner peace. And I'm going to hand this to Michael, but one thing that is getting lost in this broader national conversation and shuffle, not completely, we all know it, but I just want to emphasize it. There are plenty of people who still think that diversity, inclusion, and equity is really important and highly value it in their organizations for any number of reasons. It can be moral reasons, it can be the business case. And this is all sorts of people. This is C-level, this is junior staffers, mid-level managers, community leaders, whoever. There are, including me, and including I think all of us on this call, there's still there are still people who care about that. So don't shy away from showing that part of yourself. I really want people to feel comfortable doing that. Whatever your other activities are, like Nadine was talking about the Ukrainian Women's Council, the create whatever what those kinds of things are the things that resonate with us on resumes and hearing why you do them, because we'll get into a conversation about that. And that really does help build the relationship. So I know it's a scary time and you feel like everybody feels like, because that's how we're being made to feel, to be honest, that we have to hide who we are or be a certain way and recognize that's a certain perspective from a prominent perch. It does not reflect how many other people in the US feel. And frankly, it doesn't reflect how people around the world feel either. I just got back from 10 weeks in Spain. People are like, what are they doing? What is happening in the US? And I'm like, I wish I could tell you. But that's one point of view and a loud point of view. It doesn't reflect everybody else's. So please don't feel like you have to hide yourself. Bring yourself. This is what you've been involved in. This is what you care about. That goes a long way in building the relationship with a firm like ours. That in turn means it might not be this job, but it might be another job down the line because the relationship will have been built. Karen, back to you.